descends into human beings around the age of 2. When that phase of development, called the terrible twos, begins, the child's ego starts to assert itself, and the process of separation from others begins in earnest. At that point, we fully are on the path towards forgetting who we really are. Years ago, when I worked in the corporate world, I befriended a man whose job it was to get us to sell more of his company's software. He was a typical salesman, good at his job, and someone who I just assumed was completely materialistic, and that's how he appeared. Until one day we went out to lunch together, and the conversation quickly went from something superficial to something very deep. He was talking about his children, and he told me a story that had happened to him recently where he and his wife had gone over to a friend's house who'd had a baby. And they were all down in the kitchen having a glass of wine and kind of marveling. This was sort of the new era of infant monitors. So they were marveling at the fact that they could hear the baby upstairs while they were downstairs enjoying their adult time. Then suddenly, he and his wife heard his 3-year-old in the room. And they heard the little boy go up to the crib of the baby and say, "Tell me what God is like, because I'm beginning to forget." And when he told me that, I just got chills. I still get chills thinking about it today, because we do remember, and we are connected, and we are in the oneness until slowly but surely we begin to shut ourselves down, because that's what happens to us when we're here in the material world. So we forget. And the irony is that we incarnate into these physical bodies in order to work out our karma and overcome our material attachments, to remember who we actually are. So we come here to remember, but actually what happens when we come here is we forget. So trying to get back to that state of oneness, that's all enlightenment is to be fully awake and fully conscious of who you are while you're in the material world and in the material body. Looking around today, that point seems to be completely lost on us. The condition of our world reflects a profound state of alienation from our true selves. War, poverty, crime, depression, selfishness, injustice, greed, all of which are happening on a moment-to-moment basis in today's society, are happening because of our state of disconnectedness. Meisha Sama calls this disconnection from spirit a spiritual or mental sickness. And it is sickness, because anything we do that causes harm can only be justified by the ego, not the soul. When you're in a state of oneness, living in an awakened state of consciousness, you cannot go against another, nor can you harm yourself. It's impossible. So we live in a world of unconsciousness at a time when the disconnection is so profound and so deep that most people are asleep. They're in a kind of spiritual coma. Of course, they believe they are alive and living their lives to the fullest, when in reality they are only functioning on the surface of life, trying to accumulate security through material things which are only temporal. It's like playing that game of life, the board game, or Monopoly, and thinking that it's real. It's not real. And yet we are attached to those things which we are accumulating or moving across that game board, and we believe that if we have more of them, we will finally reach a place of fulfillment. But we don't, because we can't. But many of us search to escape from that reality, and in our lives searching for thrills that make us feel more alive, or by numbing ourselves so that we cannot feel our own internal despair at the emptiness. Some lucky few get fed up and go seeking the peace and connectedness that they're missing. Most, however, lead what Henry David Thoreau called quiet lives of desperation, waiting for the misery to come to an end while they pretend on the outside that their SUVs, flat screen TVs, and juicy jeans are making them happy. They go to the grave with their song still in them. The melody made by their inner God self remains unawakened and is not able to express itself in the material world. When I was in Israel this past summer, I went to the old city, which is the old walled city. It still exists. Walked through the Jaffa Gate, and I was actually going there to buy some rosary beads for a friend of mine who's Catholic. The minute I walked in, I felt somebody approach me, because that's what happens, right? People trying to make money by guiding you to the shop where you'll go and buy whatever it is you're looking for. And normally I would have been completely uninterested in having someone take me around, because I can find my way around. But since I knew I had to get to the Joreh gathering, way on the other part of Jerusalem, pretty soon I thought, well, why not? Why not let this man take me to where I need to go? So Ibrahim was his name. Turns out he was in his early 50s, like me. He looked like he was about 70 years old, missing teeth, missing hair, not looking very healthy, overweight. And so he said to me, where do you want to go? And I said, well, I'm looking for rosary beads. He said, I know where to take you, the Armenian Quarter. I said, okay, let's go. And as we're walking, he starts asking me questions. He says, oh, so you're Catholic? I said, no, I'm not Catholic. He said, oh. He said, you're Christian? I said, well, no, I'm not a Christian either. He said, but you love Jesus. I said, yes, I love Jesus. Jesus was a good man. And he was looking at me, he couldn't figure me out. So then finally he said, well then, what are you? And I thought to myself, I want to say something that he's going to be able to understand. I don't want to alienate him. I want him to understand that we're the same. So I said to him, I believe in the one God. And then his face lit up. Me too. I believe in the one God too. I said, that's good. So he took me to the shop. I bought my rosary beads. I met some friends of his that were visiting from the United States. We all sat around and had some lemonade because it was a very hot day. And then we turned around and we were heading back to the gate. And as we were walking, he was very quiet. And I noticed that he was a little bit tense. And so I asked him, I said, are you okay? He said, oh, I haven't been able to sleep very well lately. Something's been telling me to leave Jerusalem. I said, oh, well, if you're having those feelings, it's really good to listen to those feelings, because it could be somebody telling you something. Yeah. And I said, so I thought, he seems like he's anxious. He could use some light. So I said, if you like, I can give you some of the energy healing light that we do in my religion. He said, okay. So we stopped. We went into this little courtyard. We sat down. I gave him Joreh for 3 minutes. I was a little bit nervous to give him more than that. I didn't want him to get restless. I gave him Joreh for 3 minutes. I stopped. I said, okay, now you can open your eyes. And he looked at me. He said, what did you do? I said, well, it wasn't me. He said, were you touching my head? I said, no, I didn't touch you. I didn't touch you at all. He said, oh. He said, now my legs don't hurt anymore. When we were walking, my knees were hurting. Now they don't hurt anymore. He said, you weren't touching my head because I felt somebody touching my head. I said, no, I was not touching your head. He said, and now I feel so good. I feel so peaceful. I said, yeah. I said, that's God. He said, yes. I've been feeling like I should go to Jordan. That's what's been keeping me up at night. I said, well, maybe you should go to Jordan. And then we were quiet for a few minutes, and then he said, maybe I could learn how to do this. I said, yeah, you could learn how to do this. He said, and maybe I could take this to Jordan and do this for people there. I said, yeah, you could do that. He was very excited, and his face had completely completely changed. On the walk back, he was very excited. He said, "You have to take my number. We have to meet again. You have to come back and you have to teach me how to do this." I said, "Okay." So I took his number. The other day I called him. We're going to be connected. I'm going to ask him to try to find 5 other people that are interested, and then I'll go back and I'll teach them. Give them the membership course. So here was a Palestinian Arab in the middle of the old city of Jerusalem, living that life of misery, essentially. I could tell he had that quiet desperation where he wasn't sharing with others that he was unhappy, but he was living that misery, that unhappiness inside of himself. And in 3 minutes of Joreh, so many things transformed for him. And he went from thinking about himself and his own unhappiness to thinking about how he could help other people feel what he was feeling in that moment. So during these times in particular, people are so desperate. They want their misery to end. On the day that people become a Joreh member, they walk through the doorway of the temple of consciousness. Take your first step towards enlightenment. You feel different. You feel more awake. You feel more connected, more peaceful, more present. It's like emerging out from under a thick layer of clouds, and suddenly you behold an incredibly beautiful world where it's easier to breathe and you know and see the truth that you're a spirit, that you're not a material being, but you're a spirit. But then your material life reasserts itself, and you go back under for a while and you forget. Then you come to the center and you receive Joreh, and you feel that feeling again, and you remember, and you wake up a little bit more. And that next time, a little bit more of that awakened state stays with you. So incrementally, it's like walking up those stairs, bit by bit, towards a more awakened state. Until one day, it's almost like your head is above those clouds. And it stays above those clouds. And then when you're walking around, you start noticing the other people that are awake, because there are other people that are awake. Not only people within these walls are awake, there are people who are awake all around us. And you start identifying them and you start sharing with them. And that's how you start building community. Each time you receive Joreh, you're peeling off more layers. As your inner light shines forth a little more each time, your life begins to change. The Joreh path towards enlightenment is like the proverbial tortoise from Aesop's fable, the tortoise and the hare. It's one foot in front of the other, bit by bit, step by step, a slow unfolding of consciousness until one day you look around and you realize you're awake. And once you're fully awake, all you want to do is serve. That's all you want to do. That initial impetus that you felt when you received Joreh, it stays with you. And then that's all you want to do. So what I want for all of us here today is to change our consciousness around our work. Maestro Sama mentions enlightenment and self-realization 14 times in our book, Foundation of Paradise. And the idea of awakening or becoming awake, awakening others, 45 times. And yet, we never talk about it. We need to start talking about it. We need to know that Joreh is in fact a path towards enlightenment. It's a path upon which consciousness is progressively raised each time we give and receive Joreh. Paradise on earth, the golden age of Maitreya, heaven on earth, as Jesus called it, is a world of enlightened people. So for those souls that are ready to break free, here is the light. Keep your eyes open. Find your Ibrahim. Find that person who's suffering internally. Channel Joreh to him or to her and watch as they awaken to their true selves. And then their soul will sing that melody here in the material world.